And I guess I'm just wanting to say welcome everyone. It is our last week together, week 8 of our webinar series on mindfulness. It's been a nice journey for all of us, and I just want to extend, I guess, my gratitude for all of you for being here and for participating and kind of taking part in these webinars. It's really fun for me to get to do this, and I really enjoy these types of things. So I just wanted to say thank you for all your participation, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed this series as much as I have. And I guess, as usual, I want to start off by asking if anyone had a mindful moment this week that they'd like to share. I think if I were to say my mindful moment for the week, I took a little road trip to visit some friends in St. John this weekend, and it was really nice to be able to, we went to a beach there and just sat and listened to the waves, and it's been a long time since I've been able to do that, even though it's one of my favorite things to do. So I really enjoyed doing that. So that was my mindful moment for the week. Does anyone else feel like sharing? Ooh, that sounds lovely, Anne. One, you're getting to enjoy the nice, it seems like it's been a little bit cooler in the evenings lately. So you're getting to enjoy the nice, cool evening and listening to music. That sounds really peaceful. Okay, so as I said, this is our last week together, and I really hope that the skills that you've learned throughout this webinar series will just continue to go stronger and stronger the more and more that you practice these things. Conversely, as we've kind of talked about throughout this webinar and throughout this series, is that, you know, this is a skill. Mindfulness is something that if you don't practice, if you don't use them, they'll kind of slip further from your grasp. So they are something that you really do have to practice on a regular basis in order to maintain. So this is just a little friendly reminder, I guess, for those of you who are really noticing the benefits and noticing how mindfulness has helped you in your life, that this is something that has to continue on after the 8 weeks are up and post our time together. So even though we won't have kind of the weekly reminders by coming to group and participating in these conversations, that you still have all of the tools and all of the worksheets, and you can even go back and look at old old sessions if you'd like on the YouTube page, and you can continue to practice these skills and use them in your everyday life, just because we don't have our kind of weekly sessions together. These skills, as we talked about, these are kind of, it's a choice, right? We have to make the choice to start to implement these into our daily lives. We have to make the choice to continue to use these skills. And if you do choose to do that, if you do continue to do these things, you'll actually create real change in your life. I don't know if any of you have recognized that that there are changes in your life already just from practicing from week 1 until now. But if you have, this is just, again, it's a great, I guess, reminder here to just continue to do what you're doing and to increase the amount of time you're practicing your mindfulness skills, to become more and more aware of the way that you're communicating and how you're feeling, and to tune into your own body and your own personal experiences, as well as being able to be mindful of the experiences of people you're in relationship with. And just, like you said, just kind of putting everything together, which is our topic for today, and being able to kind of sustain these skills that we've built together. That's great, Deborah, to hear that that you have had success in terms of dealing with a difficult situation and being able to think of the other person's side, and it helped to actually like enhance that I guess dialogue between you two. That's really great to hear. Like I said, it's going to take sustained effort, but that's okay, right? I guess this is also a challenge of perseverance, right? And even though sometimes it's going to be hard and it might not feel as natural and it might not feel as easy, and again, because you don't have the weekly reminder of it, it might it might like slip your mind a little bit, but it is something that, you know, it takes practice and it takes effort, and that's kind of a way of life, right? A lot of things that we want in life sometimes do take a lot of practice and effort, and that's just how we have to roll with it. Some of us may be even questioning, I guess, like I said, that motivation, right, to keep doing this and to keep practicing, and it may seem really challenging for you to imagine, I guess, sustaining this practice over time and continuing to kind of include it in your daily life, because again, it is something that, because of old habits and old patterns and different ways of thinking, this may be like a really difficult task for you to do. It requires really conscious effort on your part to engage in those mindfulness skills. But again, just because it's challenging doesn't always mean that it's not worth it. It usually means that it is pretty worth it. And if you, again, practice what you've learned daily, it doesn't really take that much willpower. It just takes that effort to kind of be in that moment every day and just doing it, and getting into the habit of spending that like 15, 20 minutes a day practicing your skills. We've talked about, again, how we've practiced this, and over the 8 weeks, if you have been doing it, I guess, regularly and daily, it should be starting to become more of a habit for you. And if you've had moments where you've forgotten, or you maybe had a bump in the road, that's okay too. But again, just having that perseverance, as much as that might sound a little old school and preachy, but having that perseverance is really important into kind of, again, creating that habit, because once it's a habit, it's just going to become very natural for you to engage in. Great, Gina. I'm glad you really liked Insight Timer. I'm still an avid user of Insight Timer as well. And it's great that you found something that you really connect with on that app. So we like to use the metaphor here of the practice of mindfulness being almost like cultivating a garden. A garden flourishes when certain conditions are present, right? I don't know if any of you are gardeners. I don't have a green thumb. I can kill a succulent. But that idea of having certain the conditions present in order for the garden to flourish, I guess, in speaking with people who have more of a green thumb than I do, I guess certain plants thrive with each other. Certain plants require more water or less water, right? There's certain things that we have to do in order to kind of cultivate this garden, and to make sure that all the plants in the garden are working together in a cohesive way. So holding the three qualities in mind, and reflecting upon them and cultivating them according to our best understanding, this will nourish and support and strengthen your practice. And again, kind of extending this to mindfulness, same thing goes, right? We have certain qualities that we need to continue to practice and reflect on and cultivate in order for our mindfulness skills to be at their best. So having these attitudes in mind is part of that training, and part of that I guess attention retraining, part of that is skill building, and it's a way of channeling our energies into the process of healing and growth. So remember too that they are interdependent. Each influences the other, and working on one enhances them all. So same with a garden, right? If you're tending to one plant, it's going to have a ripple effect into all of them, and it's all of the systems in that garden are working together to create one cohesive piece, which is the same thing with our mindfulness skills. So as we mentioned, there's some foundations here and 7 qualities that we want to reflect on and cultivate in order to create, I guess, our best outcomes, or again, to nourish and support and strengthen that practice of mindfulness skills. So we're going to go through the 7 of them. So non-judging is the first one. We've talked about this before. These are not going to necessarily be anything new in terms of different new concepts, because we're at the end of our time together and we're just kind of putting everything together. So as we've talked about before, every day we do judge things. As human beings, we naturally have a tendency to judge and to compare and to make I guess assumptions about things, or to kind of quickly go into I like that or I don't like that, or we make snap judgments about people based on our very first impression, right? I think a first impression happens within the first 3 seconds of meeting somebody, right? So we kind of are very quick to judge. We're very quick to enter into that kind of mindset. And we tend to label things as good because they make us feel good for some reason, and others might quickly kind of condemn these things as bad because they make us feel bad. But again, if we always kind of reside in either good or bad, we're not leaving really much room there for nuances or for the neutral stuff. And because we don't think that that neutral stimuli has any relevance for us, these neutral events are kind of kicked out of our consciousness, and we put them in the back of our mind, and we don't really pay attention to much of them. I mean, sometimes even don't even recognize them as happening. So when this happens, and when we start to do and engage in this kind of thinking, this more, I would call it black and white thinking, and the neutral stimuli that we kind of don't really look at is that gray area. But when we start thinking in black and whites, we really miss out on, I guess, the beauty and the joy and the excitement and the even the sadness in that gray area, in those neutral stimuli. So you're missing out on this whole section of life, I guess, because we're not paying attention to it. And it could be because when we do pay attention to them, because they're pretty neutral, we might find them boring, right? And I think we talked about in our in our week on emotions, that sometimes we fail to recognize things if they're not really happy or really exciting or really I guess frustrating or sad. So we kind of live in those extremes. But there's lots of nuances and emotions and things that can come from maybe that gray area or that neutral stuff too. When we make these quick judgments, we are entering into that autopilot mode that we've talked about before, where things are not we're not being conscious about how we're thinking. We're not really engaging with our senses, really engaging with our environments, or even with the people that we're around. When we're in autopilot, we really are just kind of floating through life and not really paying attention to things. When we stop experiencing our lives fully and just coast through our days, we get really caught up in things that we like or dislike, right? Because it's easy, we understand it, it's very quick, it's automatic. But it doesn't help us, right? Because it's hard for us to find peace in that. Even though, again, we're working, we have like those likes and dislikes, right? But again, that neutral area, that gray area, there's a lot of things that could be exciting there. Maybe you don't like something. I'm sure all of us can relate to, we've had, I guess, maybe one bad experience with something, and then we deem it as, well, I don't like that. But in reality, maybe it was just the one bad experience and not that you don't actually like it. And if you tried it again, maybe you would like it, right? So it's, again, we always make those snap assumptions, especially around food, I think, is one of the things that we tend to make those snap judgments on. But our taste buds change, just as we change as people, right? Over the years, with new experiences and things that go on in our lives and different maturity level and different learnings that we have, we grow and we evolve as people, and our likes and dislikes change and things fluctuate. So just because we didn't like something 10 years ago or 5 years ago doesn't mean we won't like it now. So when we live in that kind of extreme of good or bad or like or dislike, we're not really leaving much room for, I guess, like experiencing anything new or expanding our horizons in any way. We just kind of live in that very black and white. So it's important to recognize that this judging quality of mind when we practice mindfulness, right? So when we're in that space of wanting to, maybe you're in a meditation and you're judging yourself for the experience that you're having. You're saying, well, I'm not being quiet enough. My mind is too busy. I'm thinking too much, or I'm not breathing deeply enough. I'm not listening enough to the guided meditation, right? That judging mind is really distracting you from actually just like being in the moment and enjoying it for what it is. Maybe it's not your best. Maybe you aren't as focused as usual. Maybe there's a lot on your mind today. Maybe there's a lot of stress in your life at the moment. But again, you're judging yourself for that rather than, again, just allow Hi, everybody. I don't know if I'm back. Can anyone hear me? Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. My internet just cut out on me. I apologize. So sorry. Let me just get myself back up and running here. All right. Let's see. There we go. How does everyone see that okay? Perfect. All right. Again, I apologize for that. That was unexpected, but we're gonna roll with it. All right. So I think the last thing I heard that I was saying, I was talking about how sometimes, especially with mindfulness and especially with meditation in particular, sometimes a lot of people, I think one of the things I hear the most often with meditation and with mindfulness is I don't like to meditate. I don't enjoy it. I find it boring. I can't sit still. I can't get focused. So there's a lot of, I guess, resistance, like personal resistance to mindfulness and to meditation sometimes. A lot of people say, this is boring. This isn't working. I can't do this. But I want us to start recognizing when that happens as this is just your mind judging the experience. This is just that natural tendency for our minds to jump into that judging mentality. So you don't have to stop judging yourself when you get into that mindset, but recognize that it's something that you can turn off in the sense that you're in. So when you notice those thoughts of, oh, like this is, and you can start recognizing that for what it is, you can start to decide, okay, I know what that is. I know why it's happening. I know it's just my mind going into my autopilot, into my automatic thought mode, and into my judging mode, and I just need to bring myself back. It's important for us to start to observe the full experiences of our lives and our reactions to it, and how sometimes things happen and we do jump into that autopilot mode, and that does create some resistance, or it does create maybe some dislike towards things, or again, jumping into that very black and white kind of I like this or I don't like this kind of mindset. That's great, Beverly, that for you, the longer you meditate, the more you can stay focused. And I think, again, I think that just goes to show that um, as we talked about, I think in week 3, about the way that our minds work in terms of mindfulness, I think that just goes to show that the longer you're able to get into that mode, the more your brain calms down and the more you're able to kind of stay in that rest, digest kind of neutral place. And your mind actually is getting all the benefits of the meditation and the mindfulness. So our second foundation is patience. So patience is actually a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. We cultivate patience towards our minds and our bodies when we practice mindfulness. We intentionally remind ourselves that there is no need to be impatient with ourselves because we find the mind judging all the time, or because we feel agitated or frightened or anxious, or because we may have been practicing for a while and nothing seems to be happening, or the skills, I guess, aren't really working for us, the things that we've been talking about. Why does this happen? I think it's because we're having them anyway. We have to give ourselves room for these experiences, even though they might not always feel great, I guess. And we may feel agitated. We may feel like we're judging ourselves. We may feel frightened. We may feel anxious. We may feel like today nothing's going on, or maybe the past week, the mindfulness skills just haven't really been working for us. And they haven't really been, I guess, showing their benefit as much as they may have in the past. But that doesn't mean that nothing is happening. We just have to let that experience happen for what it is. I think we've talked about a lot before about recognizing the emotions that we're having and not really giving too much, I guess, weight to that, other than the fact that they're happening. We're feeling an emotion, and to allow that to come up and then to move through. it's not, I guess it's not helpful to always be in that mindset of I need to rush to have a better experience, or I need to rush to experience something good. Again, that's only minimizing and discrediting or dismissing again, those bad feelings, or maybe even the neutral ones, right? So again, this is kind of, again, talking about that idea of that black and white thinking style, and how we don't want to reside in those extremes. We want to experience the full range of emotions, the full range of experiences that life has to offer. And sometimes that does require us to have patience, because there's I guess a theme in our society, in our culture, that, you know, we always want to be striving for the next best thing. We always want to be working towards something new, something better, something bigger. And that mindset that we can get into can sometimes be really detrimental, again, to noticing the nuances and the little things that happen in life that can be really wonderful too. Rushing into the next best thing, or always thinking that there's going to be something better, like a greener pastures, again, takes away from the present. It takes away from the neutral stimuli and the things that has to offer. And it kind of always propels us into this, I need more, I need better, I need something new and different. But each moment in our lives is special and unique, but it's about that attention that you're giving it, and that, I guess, the mindfulness you're offering that moment. So the next one we have here is beginner's mind. Beginner's mind is that idea of that we tend to take the ordinary for granted, and we fail to recognize or grasp the extraordinariness of the ordinary. We fail to see the richness of the present moment. But we need to create what is called the beginner's mind. So a mind that is willing to see everything that as it is for the first time. I think we can all relate beginner's mind to when children experience things for the first time. I'm not a parent myself, but I think one of the things I've often heard is that it's just really wonderful. And when I've interacted with children, especially young children in particular, the way that they see the world and the way that they experience things for the first time is so joyful, and it brings out such a playfulness and an awe and a wonder. And it's great to get to see a child experience those things for the first time. And as a parent, that's one of the exciting parts, is being able to experience it almost all over again through the eyes of your children. So that's beginner's mind, that idea of I guess, that they're just in the moment. They're just experiencing things for what it is, as it is, and they're just there in the moment. So having an open beginner's mind allows us to really be receptive to new possibilities. And again, it prevents us from getting stuck in the ruts of our own experiences, that our autopilot mode, that black and white thinking. And especially sometimes too, if we feel as though we're an expert at something, if we feel as though we've mastered a skill, if we feel as though we excel at a certain area and we're an expert in it, that often, I guess, shows us that we feel like we know things or can do things, I guess, better than another person who may not know as much as us, which is fine. It's probably true, but it makes you think that you might know, I guess, more than you do. So the next time you see somebody who is familiar to you, you can practice this, I guess, beginner's mind, even with people. Ask yourself if you're seeing this person with fresh eyes, or is as he or she really is. Or are you only seeing the reflection of your own thoughts about this person and your own feelings as well? So are you really engaging with this person for who they are, as they are in that moment? Or are you holding a ton of stuff from the past? And I'm not to say that you shouldn't, or that it's bad to do that. But again, people are not their histories, right? Just as much as we don't want to be defined for how we acted 10 years ago, I imagine that other people don't want to be held to that too. An example of this I can think of is when you know people in high school, and then you see them later on in life, or you see things on Facebook, or just updates of their life, and you automatically assume that they're exactly like they were in high school, like the person that you interacted with back then. But in reality, it's like, how much have you changed since you were in high school, right? And so the differences and the evolution and the growth that you've had as a person, but you can recognize that in yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not the same person I was even 2 years ago. But we don't always extend that I guess, courtesy to other people. So sometimes it's really important, especially with people in our lives, to look at them in a beginner's mind and to look at them as they are, for who they are now, and not necessarily holding who they were before in our minds all the time. It's also helpful to use this beginner's mind with problems as they arise. So try it next time you're walking around, right? Are you seeing, I can't tell you how many times I've kind of driven the same streets. I tend to take the same way to work all the time. I tend to take the same roads when I go to places that I go often. And sometimes, I don't know if you've ever noticed this or if this has happened to anyone, but you'll be driving and you see a house and you're like, I have never seen that house before, right? And so it's because you're actually paying attention to what you're doing. And for the most part, again, when we get into that autopilot mode and we tend to do things one way, we are in that autopilot, we're not noticing the other things that are happening around us. But then all of a sudden you are paying attention, you are in the present, and you completely notice something that you have never seen before. So again, using our mindfulness skills to be able to notice the sky, notice the stars, notice the trees, notice the water and the rocks as they are right now with a clear and uncluttered mind. Or do you tend to see things through that cloudiness of our own emotions, feelings, thoughts, and opinions? So sometimes when we are in autopilot mode and when we're stuck in our head and we're being mindful rather than having mindfulness, we tend to lose that beginner's mind. We tend to stop seeing things as they are, but rather through a lens of our own stuff. So the next one here is trust. So in practicing mindfulness, your practice taking responsibility for yourself and learning to listen and trust your own being. The more you cultivate this trust in yourself, the easier you will find it will be to trust other people, to see their basic goodness. So sometimes when we don't trust ourselves, and when we don't necessarily trust our own, our own opinions and our own thought processes, and we don't trust our own feelings or even our own decision making, because we're so bogged down, and because of our tendency to go into autopilot, maybe we have made blunders, maybe we have kind of made mistakes and we haven't chosen the best at all times. But because of those things, it's not because we're bad at decision making or because we can't think for ourselves or etc., whatever, I guess you want to fill in the blank there. It's not because of that. It's more because of autopilot. It's more because we're not actually conscious in those choices sometimes. So we're going to be more likely to make mistakes that are frustrating. And that can create, I guess, a lack of trust in ourselves. But that practicing mindfulness can really build that trust and build that listening to yourself and build that understanding and awareness of what's happening for you individually throughout your day. So it's far better to trust your own intuition than to look outside yourself for guidance. And even when we make mistakes along the way, we still have to trust that we are inherently a good person, that we have basic goodness. We still have to trust that we're not a failure just because we've made mistakes. We have to trust that we are still learning and growing and evolving and shifting, and that's okay. And that comes with mistakes. So again, practicing mindfulness can offer you, I guess, a little bit of peace from those judgments, peace from that idea of, again, black and white thinking. And kind of that good versus bad, right? When we kind of overgeneralize, when we make mistakes and we're living in that kind of autopilot, good or bad, right? We're going to kind of automatically assume we've made a mistake. That means I am all bad. We generalize. So we don't allow for a nuance. We don't allow for, okay, we've made a mistake. Yes, that happens. I'm a human being and I need to learn and I need to grow from this and I need to move forward. But I also see myself as a whole person who has good and bad, as well as neutral and kind of gray area there. So that fifth one there is non-striving. So almost everything we do for a purpose. We have somewhere to go, or we have an errand to run, or we have dishes to do or chores to get done. In meditation, this can be a really big hurdle. I'm sure all of us can relate to the idea of being in mindfulness or trying to be mindful, and you're thinking about all of the tasks that you have to do at hand, whether after, even right now, sitting in this webinar, you may be like, okay, at 11 o'clock, I have to do this, this, and this. Like, you may already be thinking about what you have moving on, like within the rest of your day. Meditation is ultimately a non-doing. So there's really no goal there, but just to be who you are right now in the moment during your meditation. For example, if you sit down and say, I'm going to get relaxed and I'm going to be enlightened by this, or I'm going to become a better person from this meditation, then you've already introduced an idea into your meditation. Having an intention is okay, and saying, you know, I just want to be here right now. I just want to, feel my breath. I just want to take in the words that the person is saying, the guidance that they're giving. But when you have that idea of, okay, I need to do this for a specific purpose, there's already an intention there, an idea of your meditation. So instead of just allowing yourself to be with yourself, and to feel, if you're in pain, to feel that pain, or if you are feeling tense, to feel that tension, or feeling all the criticisms or praise or joy and sorrow that we hold in our awareness. And then we don't allow ourselves to feel that, right? Because we're already in that mindset of, no, I came in wanting to be relaxed. So you've already put in, I guess, like a goal in mind for when you're meditating. And so you're not able to, I guess, recognize what needs to come up or what's trying to come up in that moment, because for you're already like, well, no, my goal is to be relaxed. So these things, these emotions that might be coming up isn't helping me relax. So we kind of push those aside. Like we talked about earlier, with that kind of always rushing to the next best thing or the better thing. The striving that we have to get to a certain place or get to a goal can sometimes, again, prevent us from being in the moment with just who we are, as we are, what's coming up, what emotions are there. If we continue in our meditations to allow our minds to be blank, to acknowledge the feelings and thoughts as they come up, and then to let them go with your breath and allow your mind to return to peace, you might find that your meditations go a little bit better for you, because you don't have that intention of, I need to feel a certain way after I'm done this, or I need to get something from this. What you get from it will, I guess, come up as it comes up, or how it needs to come up. But I guess having that non-striving attitude and allowing, again, things to come up as they need to can be really helpful. So number 6 is acceptance. So acceptance means seeing things as they actually are in the present. So if you have a headache, you accept that you have a headache. Sooner or later, we have to come to terms with things as they are and accept, whether it is a diagnosis of something as tough as saying cancer, or even as painful and really sad as learning about someone's death. Often acceptance is reached only after we have gone through really big emotion-filled periods of denial and pain and anger. These stages are a natural progression of acceptance and of coming to terms with things as they are. But instead of avoiding the truth, embrace it. Look for opportunities of growth rather than seeing only the negative and the painful. Acceptance does not mean that you have to like everything, or that you have to take a passive attitude and towards everything and abandon your principles and your values. Instead, we accept the present as it is nothing more and nothing less. We appreciate the moment we're given, and we make it special and try and induce, I guess, as much positivity as we can, and find, I guess, the bright spots even in difficult times. By saying that, by no means am I saying that if you're going through a tough loss, if you're going through a painful experience like the loss of a loved one, or you're going through something difficult as a diagnosis of an illness, by no means am I saying that you have to, ignore the fact that that's really painful and it's really tough and there's lots of hard emotions there, and to only be positive, because I think in some ways that can be toxic as well. I think I've talked about before, maybe I haven't, but the term of toxic positivity, right? When we try to be positive all the time, that is a way of us dismissing kind of the full breadth and the full scope of all of our emotions, and we ignore maybe the negative, quote unquote, negative ones. So by no means are we saying here that by having acceptance, we are avoiding or dismissing our negative emotions or our painful emotions. What we're saying is that you can still have those moments and still learn and to grow and appreciate the moment that you're having. When we're in a state of mindfulness and we're practicing these skills, we understand that emotions are temporary. We understand that they come up and this is just how we're feeling right now. And we accept that this is the way that we are in the moment. We don't try and push or strive or, press for something different. The only thing we can be sure of is that this moment will change, right? So again, acknowledging that we have tough feelings in the moment, we also are acknowledging that this is temporary. This will change. This feeling will not last forever. It will eventually shift and take a new shape. So by focusing on being alive and in the present, we practice accepting whatever is and whatever will emerge in the next moment. But again, when we live in that space of black and white or striving or looking for the next best thing, we're not actually in the moment and we're not actually appreciating what we have. And then again, we might have expectations of what's going to happen next, and then that can be disappointing and lead to tough stuff too. So that last one there, number 7, is letting be. So when we start paying attention to our inner experiences, we really quickly discover that there are certain thoughts, feelings, and situations that the mind seems to want to hold on to. If they're pleasant, we try to prolong these thoughts or feelings or situations. We stretch them out, we conjure them up over and over again. We kind of try and live in that joy or that excitement or that pleasantness. Similarly, if there are many thoughts and feelings and experiences that we try and get rid of or prevent ourselves from having because they're unpleasant, painful, frightening, or in one way or another, we don't want them and we want to protect ourselves from them, then we're not allowing those things to happen, right? But we can also, that also in turn, as we talked about, that vicious cycle can allow us to linger in those things for too long as well. So in meditation practice, we intentionally put aside that tendency to elevate some aspects of our experience and reject others. Instead, we just let our experience be what it is and practice observing it from moment to moment. Letting go is a way of letting things be and accepting things as they are. Letting go is not such a foreign experience. We do it every single night when we go to sleep. We lie down on a padded surface when the lights are out in a quiet place and we let go of our mind and body. When we can't fall asleep, that means that we aren't letting go. We're not allowing ourselves, our minds, our bodies to enter into that sleep state. So letting go is something we do every night unconsciously. We don't even necessarily think about it. It's just part of going to sleep. Most of us have experienced time when the mind just won't shut down when we're in bed. This is one of the first signs that we have elevated stress levels, when we can't fall asleep and we can't let go. At this time, we may be unable to free ourselves from certain thoughts because we're really involved in them, we're over involved in them, and they're really powerful. They're really taking hold on our brains, and they're not allowing us to move into a more neutral state and allow us to let go. And this makes things worse, not only because our mind is stuck in that place, but on the other hand, we're also not able to sleep, which then increases our stress. And again, it's a vicious cycle, right? I can't tell you that sleep is super important. And if I don't get enough sleep, I hate that. It's not fun. And I'm sure all of us can relate to the fact that things are a lot more difficult when we have less sleep or we're not able to fall asleep. So if you are somebody who can fall asleep pretty well, for the most part, on majority of occasions, you're able to just kind of let go and fall asleep, you're already an expert at that idea of letting go. So I guess it's just about practicing and applying that skill to waking situations and applying that skill of letting go into our daily life rather than just when we're trying to fall asleep. So resistance in the context of mindfulness is a wake-up call. So this is something that we need to talk about as we're wrapping up, because resistance is something that can really interfere with our experiences of mindfulness. So in bringing my awareness, I guess, to the aspects of our daily life that we habitually resist, we begin the work of transforming them. So in using mindfulness and again, developing more awareness for ourselves, for our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, and what's coming up for us, we may actually be able to pinpoint where we have resistance and where we need to do more work. So it might be important to take a couple moments to consider your own resistances, your own habitual resistance. Is there some situation or task or person or event that you commonly find yourself faced with, but which you don't really like? It can be as mundane as taking out the trash, right? Or doing the dishes or sweeping, right? The main thing is that we're looking for the quality of aversion, that idea of I don't like this, that repetition of saying you're constantly faced with this situation, you're constantly saying to yourself, oh, I hate this, I don't like doing this. So now take a few moments and consider this mindfully. Begin with our bodies and hold the image of that resistance and explore the feelings that come up. When you imagine being in that situation, say it is doing the dishes, describe that situation as much as you can. Describe how it feels in your body to be in that moment. What is it that you're feeling? Is it because for you, you're stuck in your head and you're constantly thinking about other things you have to do? So doing the dishes feels like it's preventing you from getting to that goal. Are you striving? Are you not non-striving? Maybe you notice that you, in these certain situations, you have heaviness or shallow breathing, or there's a tenseness in your shoulders. You next want to consider any collateral effects that might be happening in the mind. So you may have negative thoughts that come up when you're doing this task that you have resistance to. You may be having different images that come up, fears. So again, it's really important to watch these and to train and the train of emotions that kind of come up from these things, and to explore this resistance with curiosity and non-judgment and openness to understanding it at a different level. What's your usual reaction to being faced with this particular task that you tend to have resistance with? If we're going with the example of the dishes again, the usual reaction could be to do it grudgingly, to try and distract yourself from it, to leave it to the last minute until you really have to do it, or to shut down as you do it. So maybe you just you are grouchy, you're allowing it to kind of interfere with your day, and you feel, I guess, this kind of negative emotions coming up as you're doing it. So as we're thinking of this situation in particular, whichever one you've chosen for you, hold your awareness within this personal resistance and see if you can allow the awareness that you have of it to equalize your aversion or soften your resistance to it. Don't strain or push, but just enter into whatever it is that you find yourself resisting in the moment. If judgments or additional resistances come up, notice those things. If nothing shifts or changes, that's okay too. Just notice whatever happens. So again, the whole point of this is, again, to develop a mindful awareness of our resistance and to notice it as just an experience, just like any other thing, and to really tap into it, tune into what's going on for us, and really understand it on a different level. It's also really important when you do this kind of work to, again, return to your breath and to really just take a couple breaths and just understand and notice that this is coming up for you, and that's okay. So daily practices, as we're kind of wrapping up, and we've talked about most of these things before, nothing is new, but these are really the exercises and the regime to maintain your emotional and psychological health. So the practice has 5 parts. And again, these are not new. These are things that we've been practicing and talking about and learning about for the past 8 weeks. So mindfulness practice, deep relaxation through whether it be a body scan or a meditation or whatever, self-observation. So we've talked a lot about developing awareness and understanding ourselves on a deeper level, being curious to the thoughts and the feelings and everything that comes up, the sensations on our bodies that come up. Affirmation. So we talked about self-compassion in one of our weeks. So that's going to be really important to have, because again, we need to be very mindful that, we do have critical thoughts, and we do need to affirm ourselves often to make sure that we're okay, and to have committed action to this. So doing all of these 5 things in a row, or I guess together, should really only take a total of 15 minutes a day. They should be done ideally at the same time of the day, so they can, again, be integrated into a healthy habit. So choose a period in your day when you can be alone and have a little bit of quiet. It could be just after your morning coffee or in your workspace just before going to lunch. It could be how you de-stress when you come home at night or part of your bedtime routine, maybe even on your drive home from work or your drive to work. Whatever you choose, whatever time it is, whatever way you decide to incorporate this into your life, just stick with it. Don't let other events or commitments interfere, within reason. Consider the time spent in daily practices as an appointment with yourself. This is no less important than any other of the commitments that you keep. This is also something to keep in mind, and maybe this is something you schedule into your day. If you're somebody who has a schedule and you like to keep it, maybe this is something that you really just do and you schedule it and you pencil it in as a half hour or 15-minute time slot in your day, and you really stick to that because it's part of your day and it's important to you. So each component of your daily practice is designed to strengthen one or more of those core skills that we just went over. So first and foremost are mindfulness skills, because all of the others depend on, to some degree, that mindful awareness that we've been talking about. Deep relaxation and having that kind of going into understanding how to relax your body and get it into that space is a key to distress tolerance. So being able to tolerate our feelings and tolerate our emotions. Self-observation and affirmation will help with emotion regulation and building self-esteem. And finally, a plan for committed action will strengthen that emotion regulation and interpersonal effectiveness skills. So these daily practices it all works together and integrates all of the modules that we've covered in the past 8 weeks. So the concept of committed action, we need to take special note of this. So your daily practices should include a plan for something you'll do that day or the next to solve a problem, to deal effectively with a difficult situation or person, or strengthen awareness of your self-worth and resiliency. What you choose is up to you, but committed action in some form is necessary to make any real change in your life. So you know what you'll do for your daily practice, and you know when you will do it, but now comes that important part. So that perseverance that we talked about in the beginning, spending those 15 minutes every day strengthening those skills. So how do we persevere? The answer is one day at a time, making sure that on this day, at the time that you've selected, you do your practices. The next day, you do the same thing, and the next. A commitment isn't something you make once and you're set for life. It's something that you choose to make every day. Daily practices will significantly change the way you think, perceive, and potentially behave. It will help you shape new responses to old struggles, and life isn't always about hopes or intentions, but it's about doing. It's about the action and the commitment and the perseverance that we have every single day. It's about being effective. So now that we finish up together, I'm going to ask you to kind of live what you've learned and to take these skills and these practices and the concepts and the ideas and all of the things that we've learned and talked about, and to put it into practice and to commit to that and persevere through that in your daily life. You can do it. You may not be perfect at it every day, but enough, and you may be doing enough to make real change, and that's all we can ask for. There's a poet and author, Samuel Johnson, and he said, the future is purchased by the present. So what we do today, how we invest in our skills for mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness today, can actually create a happier, healthier tomorrow and future for yourself. So building happiness is one of the things that we might be talking about, or that we've kind of touched on in terms of building those skills. So promotions, new relationships, and even winning the lottery will give you a temporary boost in happiness, right? I'm sure we can think about instances where we have been extremely happy. Every person in this group has a different baseline of happiness that we quickly return to. So this sustained happiness, this baseline, takes work, right? We can all recognize when we feel extreme happiness, but having a baseline happiness, it may be higher or lower, depending on the individual, depending on the person's individual experiences, but it really does take work. So listed below, listed here on the slide here, are different exercises that when practiced frequently can actually help build genuine and long-lasting happiness. So having gratitude, we've talked about this before. So writing down the things that you're grateful for every day, despite how simple or mundane they might be, just getting it down on paper. So this can help identify positive aspects of even the worst days that we have. Acts of kindness, making a conscious effort to do something nice for no reason other than to help. You might be surprised how simple an act of kindness can turn around the day for both you and the recipient of the kindness. Exercise, so the positive effects of exercise are really astounding. Physically active people have increased energy, superior immune systems, and a frequent sense of accomplishment. Exercise can reduce insomnia, it can actually stimulate brain growth, and even act as an antidepressant. If jogging or lifting weights seems like too much or it just doesn't work with you, don't be afraid to start with a 30-minute walk, or maybe even a bike ride, or go swimming, or tend to your garden, or mow your lawn, right? There's tons of ways to or dance around your living room, vacuum. There's tons of ways to move your body and to get exercise in that doesn't have to be going to a gym or kind of lifting weights or that typical, I guess, quote unquote, exercise. As we've been talking about for weeks, meditation, right? Meditation has really been linked through research to reduce anxiety and actually promote positive emotions. So those who meditate regularly may even permanently restructure their brains to create more sustained happiness levels. We talked about this as well, but positive journaling. So taking some time to write about your own positive qualities or even positive events in your day. So write about a fun day you spent with friends, a really good movie that you watched, and a really fun activity that you did. Positive journaling will get you in the habit of, again, focusing on the good stuff and focusing on, I guess, again, training your brain to not have that as much of a negative attention bias. And again, this isn't to say that we're ignoring or dismissing or not allowing those negative experiences to come up, but it also means that we don't get stuck in them as well. So lastly, fostering relationships. So strong social connections and having those are thought to be one of the most powerful influences on our moods. Those of us who are dedicated to spending time with friends and family show the highest levels of happiness. If you can't see your loved ones every day, like we have experienced with this pandemic, you can still send an email or make a phone call. If it feels like you never really see your loved ones, maybe it's time to schedule time in and dedicate that time to making that phone call, making that FaceTime. And now that we have a little bit more flexibility, to making that time and taking that time to make those I guess visits and to put that time as an importance on your guest list. So at Breelove Counselling, our kind of motto is breathe, trust, and let go. So breathing is a form of patience. It's a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. We cultivate our attention towards our minds and our bodies when we practice mindfulness. We intentionally remind ourselves that there's no need to react because we find ourselves judging in our minds all the time, or because we are agitated or frightened or anxious, or we're just struggling with certain emotions. We have to give ourselves room to have all of our experiences and to remind ourselves that it's okay that we might be feeling a certain way and to breathe through that experience. Trust. So in practicing mindfulness, you're taking responsibility for yourself. Again, you're learning to trust yourself, trust your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your own body, your own feelings. You're learning to trust what your gut is telling you. You're learning to tune in to yourself and what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and to be able to make decisions that you feel good about based on that awareness that you're developing. And it also gives you a sense of allowing those mistakes to come up, allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to make mistakes and to not feel that you are automatically a bad person and kind of overgeneralizing like we talked about. Letting go. So we talked about this already in our commitments. We have to give ourselves the space to let go. We talked about that idea of we let go every night when we go to sleep. We have to allow ourselves that experience to do that and to let go of the things that are taking hold of us and not allowing us to move forward with our lives. So breathe, trust, and let go. It's been wonderful sharing our team's knowledge about mindfulness with you guys. I really hope that you guys have taken something away from this and even reflected on some new skills that you have, or even if this has just prompted maybe some things to look at further. You're welcome to ask any questions. If you would like to connect with our clinical supervisor, Kayla Breelove Carter, who's a licensed counseling therapist and clinical traumatologist, you're welcome to do so. You can please connect with us through our website or Instagram, and continue to keep up with CMHA of New Brunswick for the programs and services that they have to offer. Please have a mindful day. And again, thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate your participation in everything that happened. And thank you for being patient with me today with my problems with my internet. Just thank you so much, everybody. And I'm welcoming any questions. It is 11 o'clock. So I understand if we have to get going, but thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate it.